It's Sunday morning, your service is about to start. You head up on stage, pick up your guitar, start tuning it. The lights come on and you strum that first chord and you look out and you don't see anybody out in the church. There's like 4 or 5 people, or maybe there's like 15 people, but you were expecting 100 people to be out there. Where is everybody at? Where are they? They're either out in the parking lot or they're in the lobby, or maybe they haven't even gotten to church yet. Has that ever happened to you? Have you ever started your worship service and there's nobody out there? Well, I want to share with you how you can keep that from happening. If you find yourself constantly saying, help, nobody shows up to church on time, here are 5 things that you can do to remedy that situation. It starts here. Start on time every time. Do you actually start your services on time? Listen, I know how it is. You look out on Sunday mornings and there's only like 5 people there. And so you think, okay, well, people can't get here right at 10, so I should probably just push it back to 10:05. And maybe that works for a Sunday, but then guess what? The next Sunday, people don't show up until 10:10, and so on and so forth until, come on, we've all been there. You're starting your service like 15 minutes later than you should be under the guise of, I just need people to show up on time. So I'm gonna push everything back to match their supposed schedule. But that is not what you need to do. You need to do the opposite. You need to stand firm in your starting time and commit to it no matter what. Make a commitment to me right now. I'm going to start my service on time every time. And here's what that does. When you start your service on time every time, number 1, it shows people that you're serious about starting on time. What do you communicate whenever you just say, okay, I'm just going to push it 5 minutes back? People will think, we don't actually start at 10 anyway, so I can just show up at 10:05 and slip in the back and everything will be okay. Number 2, you build trust with your church. So if you want to improve your leadership, one of the ways to do that is to do what you say you're going to do every single time you say you're going to do it. And the easiest way to do that is just to start on time, and people will trust your leadership more. So we must start there. Make a commitment to me right now that you are going to start your service at the time you have on your website every single Sunday. Now that we have that commitment established, let's talk about some practical things that you can do to make sure that people show up to your church on time. The first thing is this. You need a countdown timer. You need a clock. I recommend 5 minutes. You need a clock that starts 5 minutes before your service starts. It pops up on the screen. It can be in your worship space. It can be out in the lobby. It should probably be both places because that is a visual indicator to people that the service is about to start. I mean, we would hope that people would know, we start our services at the same time every single week, but they don't. They need as many visual and sensory and verbal and whatever other cues you can have for them to trigger that thought in their mind, okay, the service is about to start. So grab a countdown. In fact, I'll link one down in the description below that I made. It's a super simple countdown, just white text on a black screen, and you can watch how it will change how people enter into your service and actually get there on time. So start with a countdown. That is a trigger, the first trigger that shows people that your service is about to start. But you can't just put all of your eggs into the countdown basket. We have to have some other things that we do as well. And the next thing that you need to do is to have key leaders in your church transition into the worship space. This is a big one because leaders lead people. People follow them. So if you have a bunch of staff members, or maybe you serve in a smaller church and you don't even have staff members, but you have people serving like in the kids ministry, maybe you have people serving on the worship team. The worship team should probably be on stage when the service starts. Maybe you've got a pastor who likes to stand out in the lobby and talk to people. That's great. We should be building connections with people. But if you want people to enter into worship on time, then you can communicate to your leaders. It would be great if they would start that transition. Imagine this. Your service starts at 10. It's 9:55. Everybody's out in the lobby having a great time. And then all of a sudden, 15 people in that lobby make a mass exodus into the worship space. That's going to make an impact, and that will be yet another visual sign that worship is about to start. So if you can communicate to key leaders in your church and they could communicate to their team members, you could potentially have 50% of your church enter into the worship space on time on Sunday just by communicating that that's something that should happen. So try that. Talk to key leaders in your church and see if you can get them to transition, start that movement into the worship space on Sunday mornings. Now let me ask you a hard question. Is the start of your service worth being there for? What happens at the start of your service? If you weren't on the worship team, would you get to church on time for the start of the service? Or would you be like, well, there's some person who's up there reading announcements that I could have just got on an email or saw on Facebook or looked on the website, and they talk about that for like 10 minutes, and then we head into worship. How good is the beginning of your service? If you want people to show up to church on time, make it worth their while. Don't start off with unnecessary trash. I know that sounds really harsh, but I just don't like announcements in church, especially at the beginning of the service. If you don't like that, let me know in the comments below. I won't be offended. I think we should be starting with music right away because it is the most jarring transition into worship in the best possible way. It serves as an audible clue to people that the service has started. There's a huge difference between hearing somebody talking over the speakers in your worship space whenever everybody else is already out in the lobby talking. You're just adding more talking to more talking. But when your band starts and you strum that first chord, or you start with the cymbal swell and there's this huge swell into worship, that is an audible trigger for people to hear, okay, things are about to start. I need to get in there. As opposed to,
hey, welcome to church, everybody. We've got the annual potluck coming up.
No, don't start with your potluck announcement. Start with a high energy worship song. It doesn't have to always be high energy, but if you really want to embed this into people's minds, start with a high energy worship song for like the next month until they get used to starting on time. So, what's the beginning of your service look like? Are you starting with unnecessary, boring things and then expecting people to show up just because they should show up? Or are you actually giving them a reason to be there? Now, if all else fails, you've implemented those things I've talked about. You start on time every single week. You've got a countdown. You've communicated with key leaders to move into your worship space on time, and you have thought about the start of your service and made sure that it is something that people want to be there for, and then you do that for a month, and people are still out in the lobby talking when your service starts. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to simply celebrate that fellowship is happening. I think sometimes we forget about what the early church was. Think about it. Think back to the book of Acts. What did they do? I don't ever really remember them sitting down like we do on a Sunday morning. I'm sure that happened, and that's important, and we should do that, and we should sing together, and we should hear preaching, which that definitely happened in the book of Acts. But what sticks out in my mind in the book of Acts is that they just met together, hung out, and ate and lived life together. And I think in some ways that's a lot more of what church is than us getting in a room and singing together and hearing the pastor preach. All of those things are important. But what is even equally as important is that fellowship is happening. So instead of seeing people just talking to each other out in the lobby and not coming in for the service, the thing that I planned and I wish people were here for what I prepared for all week, what if we just said, man, my church has amazing relationships with each other. They are growing in Christ because they are living in Christian community. Isn't that a beautiful thing? So at the end of the day, maybe we don't need to be so mad about people not coming into church on time. Now, if you want to make sure that the beginning of your service is as good as possible, first of all, cut the announcements. Please cut the announcements. But what about you? Are you going to step up your game? I want to help you step up your game and become a better worship leader. That's why I put together the free audio training, 5 tips to instantly improve your worship leading. In that audio training, you'll learn 5 things that you can do this Sunday to instantly improve your worship leading. They're not hard to do. You just have to know them and then do them on Sunday. So check out that free audio training down in the description below. Other than that, thanks so much for joining me. Till I see you in the next video. Keep leading worship well.